This is Wisdom Anime Recap. This means war. The story begins with Mikiya Koukutou roaming the streets with an umbrella in hand. His heart skipped a beat as he laid his eyes upon Shiki for the first time, standing in the snow like an ethereal being draped in a white kimono. It was as if the snowflakes had come to life, dancing around her in reverence. He couldn't help but feel drawn to her. Months had passed since that snowy day, but Mikiya couldn't shake off the image of Shiki. And then, fate brought them together again at the high school freshman ceremony in April. Mikiya spotted Shiki in the crowd and his heart raced. He chased after her, eager to introduce himself. But it was not until the night that Shiki revealed the true darkness that lay within her. The moon was shrouded by clouds as Shiki stumbled upon a fresh corpse, its blood still flowing. And yet, instead of recoiling in horror, Shiki knelt down and applied the blood on her lips like lipstick. Her smile was chilling. Days passed, and Mikiya found himself more and more intrigued by Shiki. He brought up her choice of dress, a kimono, wondering how she could stand the cold. Shiki simply shrugged, stating that she would wear something over it when it got colder. Mikiya suggested a jacket, and Shiki took his advice, buying a striking red leather jacket that would soon become her trademark. But as the night fell, another murder took place, more brutal than the last. A man stumbled in fear, trying to escape an unseen attacker who mercilessly stabbed him with a knife. The next day, Mikiya couldn't help but share the news with Shiki. But to his surprise, Shiki was displeased, dismissing the topic as if it was of no consequence. Little did Mikiya know that the darkness he had glimpsed within Shiki was just the tip of the iceberg. And as he delved deeper into her world, he would discover a reality that was far more sinister than anything he could have ever imagined. The police stumbled upon what they referred to as the fourth corpse. The discovery set the school into a frenzied state of caution. After-school activities were banned to prevent any further tragedies from occurring. Shiki, who remained in the empty halls, crossed paths with a stranger. The unknown figure berated Shiki, asking if 4 bodies were not enough to deter her, despite her irritation. Shiki refused to dignify the comment with a response. The pitter-patter of raindrops echoed through the corridor as Shiki waited by the entrance. Suddenly, Mikiya appeared, offering her an umbrella. Startled, Shiki refused the kind gesture, stating she was waiting for someone to pick her up. They stood in silence, the downpour growing stronger. Finally, Shiki broke the stillness and asked Mikiya where he had been. He explained that he had been at a farewell party for a fellow student, Leo Shirazumi, who had decided to drop out of school after finding a new path. Mikiya had even invited Shiki, but she had doubted his sincerity. Under the shroud of nightfall, Shiki stumbled upon the 5th lifeless body. Despite the gruesome scene before her, she merely uttered, "The 5th one," devoid of any emotional response. Shiki engaged in a brutal duel with her father, wielding real katanas. Despite her best efforts, she was defeated. As they departed, her faithful servant Akitaka made an unprecedented declaration. He proclaimed that Shiki was the true successor to the Ryogi family, not her male sibling. This was due to Shiki's unique inheritance of multiple personalities, one of which was male. This personality concealed his femininity with bandages. During the lunch break, Mikiya was accosted by Koukutou, a member of the judo club, about the rumor that he was romantically involved with Shiki. Although he acknowledged his fondness for her, he made it clear that they were only friends. Later, Mikiya discovered a letter from Shiki in his desk, inviting him on a date. She seemed exactly as Mikiya expected her, but her demeanor and speech were decidedly masculine, leaving him bewildered. Over the course of their meal, Shiki scrawled 2 different kanji characters on a napkin, Shiki and Shiki, explaining that he was the opposing impulse of Shiki's psyche. They had been out of sync lately. Whatever Shiki liked, Shiki detested, and vice versa. Hitherto, the male Shiki will be referred to as Shiki 2 and the female Shiki as Shiki 1 to avoid confusion. At home, Mikiya sat with his cousin Daisuke, who was a detective working on the recent murder case. Daisuke revealed a new clue had been uncovered. Mikiya's school emblem was found at the latest crime scene. Later that day, Shiki 2 pulled him aside for a private conversation. His words dripped with warning, telling him that Shiki 1 was a danger to anyone who threatened her isolation from the world. Mikiya tried to brush off the warning and carried on as normal, but the next day he noticed the bandages on Shiki 1's left arm at lunch. She claimed it was from the last killing, but Mikiya didn't believe her. She warned him to stay away, but he couldn't resist her company. It wasn't until his next dinner with Daisuke that Mikiya's worst fears were confirmed. The killer's skin had been found underneath the victim's fingernails, and they believed the culprit had an injury around their elbow, the same spot where Shiki had bandaged herself. In a panic, Mikiya rushed to Shiki's mansion in the bamboo grove, but she was nowhere to be found. As he wandered through the grove, he stumbled upon Shiki standing in front of a headless corpse, covered in blood. She turned to face him, a sickening smile on her face. "Be careful, Koukutou-kun," she said in a chillingly calm voice. "A terrible premonition tends to attract a terrible reality." When the police questioned him, Mikiya pretended to know nothing, but in truth, he kept a watchful eye on Shiki's house every night. Unfortunately, he was far from being a master of stealth, and Akitaka quickly caught on to his routine. Despite the risk, Mikiya kept up his vigil until Shiki lost her patience with him. She confronted him again, but he still couldn't bring himself to believe she was a killer. As she turned to leave, she asked him if he would show up at her house that night, but left before he could answer. That night, Shiki appeared in a blood-red kimono, drenched in rain and brandishing a knife. She chased Mikiya relentlessly, slashing and hacking with a fury that made his heart race. He stumbled and fell in the bamboo grove, and she pounced, straddling him with the blade poised at his throat. Tears streamed down her face as she begged him to say something. All Mikiya could do was plead for his life. She told him she wanted to kill him, but her eyes were filled with melancholy. Shiki was carried by an ambulance to a hospital where she lay in a deep, unforgiving coma. The world outside her mind carried on, but for her, it was an endless darkness, a void without end. Mikiya was her constant visitor, leaving rose bouquets by her side as he sat for hours on end, his eyes fixed on her still form. The nurses praised him for his unwavering dedication, but he didn't care about their accolades. He only cared about her. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. Mikiya graduated from high school, but he still visited her every day, without fail. It was during this time that he met Toko Aozaki at a doll exhibition. She saw something in him, something she could use, and she hired him. Meanwhile, Shiki saw visions of Shiki 2, her male counterpart who floated toward her, becoming one with her when the two made contact. There was now only one Shiki. 2 long years passed. Shiki opened her eyes. She found a note reading, "Recover soon," and a bouquet of roses from Mikiya by her side. But as she looked at the flowers, she saw cracks running through them, like spiderwebs stretching out from a center. At the moment she touched those cracks, the roses began to wither and shatter, falling apart in her hands. As the medical staff tended to her, she saw cracks on them, and on herself. Visions appeared before her, a nightmare of people, and even herself being sliced through those cracks. She was confused, frightened, and lost. And in that moment of despair, she did the unthinkable. She gouged out her own eyes, screaming as blood flowed down her face. It was a desperate act, born of fear and confusion, but it was also the beginning of a new era. Shiki had gained a power beyond comprehension, a power that would change her life forever. Mikiya was told that Shiki had regained consciousness. The news gave him hope, but it was short-lived. He was not allowed to see her. Only family members were allowed to visit, and even then, only for a short time. Toko arrived at the hospital, disguised as a therapist. She visited Shiki, who had both her eyes bandaged, a reminder of her self-inflicted injury, and introduced herself as a sorceress. She told Shiki that her feelings of a hollowed heart could only be cured through connection with others. When she met Mikiya outside, Toko told him Shiki was okay, but he should not visit her yet. At night, the hospital was a different place. It was a place where spirits roamed free, searching for their next victim. Shiki was their target, and they tried to possess her body. During the day, Toko visited Shiki. They discussed Shiki's dual personality. Toko told her that her condition was special, as Shiki too had integrated himself into a now combined personality. This created a lapse in Shiki's memory, and she would not be able to conclude her involvement in the murders 2 years ago. She said Shiki too sacrificed himself for her sake. Shiki, with her eyes still bandaged, was told by the medical staff that she had recovered and could go back home. But she refused, deeply frightened by the world full of cracks she saw. Later that night, she tried to stab her eyes with her fingers, but Toko stopped her. Toko spoke with Shiki about her new ability which helped her perceive and touch the death of things. Death manifested as occlusions, allowing her to eliminate anything living by cutting along them. She called them the mystic eyes of death perception. Shiki called the explanation unnecessary, as she did not feel the desire to live. Toko says that although Shiki did not want to live, she was also scared to die. Under that condition, Shiki would be easily targeted by the spirits in the hospital, and Toko's magical protection would be voided. Disappointed, Toko left, asking Shiki if Shiki 2's sacrifice was for nothing. In the dead of night, Toko's protection failed, and all hell broke loose. A possessed corpse lunged at Shiki, determined to drag her into the abyss. Back in Toko's workshop, she explained that only present and future experiences could fill the void in Shiki's heart. In the hospital, Shiki stared death in the face and saw the true horror of loneliness. The possessed corpse attacked, and a battle ensued. Shiki fought with every ounce of strength she had, and they crashed through the window, plummeting towards the ground below. Toko arrived on the scene and tried to vanquish the corpse with her ignition sorcery, but her efforts were in vain. With no other options left, Shiki removed the bandages from her eyes and engaged in a desperate struggle with the corpse. Toko hurled a knife towards Shiki, who used it to cut her own hair and deal a lethal blow to the monster. But the horror wasn't over. The spirits possessing the corpse latched onto Shiki's body. She stabbed herself, simultaneously eliminating the spirits and what she called the weak her. Toko offered to teach Shiki how to use her mystic eyes, but for a price. She asked Shiki to work for her, to which Shiki agreed. Later, as she lay in the hospital bed, Mikiya visited her for the first time since her awakening. Shiki finally recalled his name and compared it to that of a French poet. A dark, mysterious figure cloaked in a trench coat appeared before three unsuspecting souls. He sought out Kiri Fuju in the hospital, offering her the ultimate gift, a body that she could once again control. Fujino Asagami, wounded and helpless on the unforgiving streets. He healed her wounds with a mere touch, leaving her stunned and bewildered. But the most gruesome encounter occurred in a desolate alleyway, where a blood-soaked man awaited his fate. The stranger approached him, and the man asked his name. The stranger answered, Amegas, Surinaraya,